Dr. Herman. Dr. Herman is the Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he's the Associate Chief of the Department of Psychiatry at MGH. However, to me, Dr. Herman is a mentor and a great friend, and I think he's really fun. So John Herman, Associate Professor of Psychiatry في جامعة الطب الخارج ويشتغل كدكتور بالديبارتمنت السايكاتري ب MGH أو مستشفى ماساتشوستس العام.
Good evening, everyone. This is a special pleasure for me to be here. This is the first time that I have been to this area of the world, and what I wasn't expecting was to eat as much as I have eaten. It has been not only beautiful here and delicious, but your hospitality has been something that I've never experienced before. I don't want to leave. I've heard many stories. One of the stories that I just chanced upon was the story of a wedding. And I'm sure you know about weddings as they happen in the West, but I had not known about what sounds to me like a magical thing that happens, that harkens back so many generations, and has such great importance. I've learned about this group of people, your group of people, your tribesmen, your families, and the memory and importance and pride that you have for those families. In the United States, and maybe elsewhere in the world, 50% of marriages end. 50% of marriages end. 40% of children are born to single mothers. So I'm supposed to be talking about why stress matters. Well, it matters if you don't have that happen. Can you imagine, and those of you who have had friends and perhaps family, it is not just the individual who is separated. It is the family that is impacted. Stress is about losses, and we're going to talk more about that. And I'm going to tell you the truth about something. I could have called this talk something about mental health or something about psychiatry, and I think it's really hard to change those words. People have an idea of what it means, and they either get afraid or they walk the other way. I'll tell you, when I go to a party and people say, "What do you do?" and I say, well, even myself, my own statement, when I started out as, I used to say, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a physician. It took a long time for me to say with pride and ready to be alone at a party after I said, well, I'm a psychiatrist. But after a while, I learned as the party went on into the evening, and especially in that part of the world where people do drink alcohol, within an hour or so, they come back, and I find myself having lots of conversation with lots of people who, at that point, either are disinhibited or have the courage or maybe the trust to talk, and then you hear the stories, and as you've heard, everybody has stress. You can, if I was to say, how many of you have had any stress at all in the last week? said, how many of you have any kind of mental illness? There won't be a hand up, and I don't think in most places there will be. I'm not sure there should be. But, I mean, if just driving a few blocks here is stressful for everyone. So, okay. So let's see where I go with this. Oh, okay. Talk about stress. This says soldier, statesman, author, patriot, but still a disappointment to his mother. When I said, and this goes a bit to the stigma, when my mother was very proud that I was a physician, and then she didn't quite know what to do, that I was a psychiatrist. And she used to say, some of you heard this, she would say, when she would introduce me to other people, she would say, well, here's my son, he's a psychiatrist, but he's nice. Even at, well, anyway, so she wanted to see what I did, and she came to one of my talks. I don't know what it means that 2 weeks later she sent me this cartoon. We could go into what may have been an understanding of how the brain works, and David, in your earlier lecture, showed you something about that. But I thought it would be fun anyway, because for me, it's absolutely fascinating about how the brain works. We'll talk a little bit about how stress impacts the brain. And in the question session, we've got particularly Dr. Friccione, who can talk a lot about means of reducing stress. We'll save that for later. I'm just showing you this, if you haven't seen this. Now, let me, as you watch, it's a loop. It goes over and back. So if you didn't see it the first time, you can see it. Especially take a look at the one on the left. What this is, it's a neuroimage MRI. And you can see as it's coming up now, it starts at the top of the head like that, you see, and then it's going down layer by layer by layer, looking at the structure of the brain. The structure of the brain. Now, when I started in medicine, there used to be a thing, let's see if Greg or Mauricio, Dave, called a pneumoencephalogram. Greg's nodding and Mauricio's not. So a pneumoencephalogram was a way to see what was happening, and it was the most gross kind of thing, meaning it was not in any detail whatsoever. They would put air into the cranium and take an X-ray, and it yielded very little, except as Greg says, the pain. Now, this is an enormously sensitive thing, just to look at and see what's going on with illnesses. Now, everybody doesn't have any trouble understanding about neurology. We have a little bit more difficulty understanding about psychiatry. And as our chief says, psychiatry and neurology are two disciplines separated by the same organ. And the organ of the mind and the spirit and the emotions is right here, the brain. The most complex organ, and it doesn't always go right. But now we can measure it. We can see the connections, and there's billions of them. And they're impacted by stress. Some people can have a lot of stress and not have a particular impact. But they might have an impact somewhere else. Maybe they'll have an impact, and people will talk about this. Does anybody here ever say when they get upset or when they get angry or when they're trying to ask somebody to reduce the stress, do they say, you have to stop it, my blood pressure is going up? Oh, if you talk about that, you can say, well, you have to stop that, I'm getting an ulcer. My rheumatism is acting up now. Oh, the stress, what a headache. With enough stress, something breaks. And for different people, they have different vulnerabilities. It can be due to their genes. Things run in families. If you have a family that has a history of having heart attacks, you know that you need to be more careful about it because it could happen. If you have a family that has arthritis or allergies, certain color hair, you know that that's more likely to happen. And it can happen with stress, with disorder, too. And one of the things that is tremendously exciting, and we may hear more about it, we know about genetics. There's a new thing that we're talking about, and it does have to do with stress, and it's called epigenetics. So everybody knows that your genes, DNA, are a blueprint for everything that we become. There are more and more studies telling us that there's more in that blueprint that gets expressed, that happens, than always happens. There are things that determine what might happen. Some things are sparked and happen when there is stress that wouldn't otherwise happen. Even more remarkable, sometimes things that happen that are stressful in the parents can manifest a generation later in the children. So when we all say take care of yourselves, you're taking care of yourself for yourself, and maybe my new friends in Kuwait, whose families are so important, how you take care of yourself is taking care of your families. And I saw last evening a family portrait, and the family portrait showed a father, and a grandfather, an uncle, and great uncle, and great grandfather, all there in one painting, and with a big smile, I saw that, and then on either side of the way. So taking care of yourself and taking care of your children is taking care of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and you're taking care, I guess, you're taking care of your country. So, just more fun stuff to show that we didn't have to show this because you all know what we're talking about in that way, the reality of stress. There's another kind of imaging, that's the one on the left, it's called a PET scan, positron emission tomography. I got that right? And that shows not structures like x-rays and what have you. That shows metabolism. That shows what's flowing in the brain, what part of the brain is working. And as you can see, it's pretty rough. It's like a watercolor. It's not particularly discrete. But we've more and more and more been able to measure those things precisely, and then we merge them. We overlap them, huge signs, and now computers have allowed us to do this in ways that used to take months or sometimes years to measure how pieces or parts of the brain shrink, get smaller. With depression, they get smaller. We can measure it, it's real. And when you put these two images together, this is an example of dopamine, which is an important chemical in the brain. And you put that together if you take a look at the image that's on the right side of the screen, with some of the colors mixed in precisely, and you can see the activity and where it happens. And so we're learning about things in a way that's extraordinary. And we're learning about how stress can impact. So, I think you've heard about this already, so I don't need to spend time about this. These things happen, they're real. They run in families, they can happen individually. But if you take a look at the lifetime risk, overall, it's 1 out of 5. Some countries, some places more. Some socioeconomic status, more. But, as you've already heard and you're going to hear again, no family goes untouched. We have what we call a council in our department in Boston. It's called the Psychiatry Council, and it's made up not of members of our department, but friends of our department. We now have 76 members who are annual subscribers to this, who are all friends of our department, oftentimes family members or individuals themselves who have benefited. And they were pioneers. We started out with 2, and then there were 10, and then there were 30, and now there's 78, I think is the number. Those of you in the room tonight are pioneers in that sense, that you are like a council, and your support is necessary to do what a number of you have already told me you want to do. And you all have stories. You don't have to come up to me in the corner later to tell me I know you do. Public perception of mental illness. This is from the U.S. It's true everywhere. Of the things they think mental illness is, all the excuses for it, bad parenting, weakness, the fault of the person, the victim, their fault, that it's incurable or sinful. And only a fraction think that it's biological. I would think, especially after, the very fact that you are all here, I would expect that that line, that 10% line, would be probably at this point closer, I'm not saying you've got everybody convinced, but closer to the 70%. Because of stigma. Half of all individuals never seek treatment because of that, or because it's not recognized. So, it impacts work, family, it impacts how somebody feels about themselves, and Dave said that it's a double jeopardy. Not only do you have depression, but you feel ashamed. And how do you get treatment if there's not treatment available, or if you withhold yourself from that? So here's a cartoon. It says, "The doctor will see you now, Mrs. Hammond. Please try not to upset him." If the doctor doesn't know what to do, or they're not supposed to talk about it, they haven't been trained in it, or you don't really want to talk about it, but everybody has said it. It slows down the day. Your doctors work extraordinarily hard. That much we've learned. Extraordinarily hard to bring up this topic. I think it's almost impossible with the amount of time they have in the training to address these issues. So that's changing. This is an evening conference, and we have another tomorrow. In the daytime, we've had an academic conference with professionals, very well attended, attending to what we're saying. We're making relationships, figuring out ways to bring more, exchange more, learn more, so it won't be so upsetting in the future. Circumstance is never an excuse for failing to treat depression. So if there's enough stress, the risk is to say, well, their father died, they just had a terrible business failure, they broke their leg, so no wonder they're depressed. If they're depressed, you wouldn't say, well, they had a terrible accident, they had a major blood vessel that was cut, they've been bleeding for 3 hours. Well, of course they've got low blood pressure and they're going into shock. It's understandable. No, you wouldn't say that. You would give them a transfusion. There's no excuse just because it's explainable. Thought I'd just say a bit about this. It's always extraordinary. If you consider suicide, which is a terrible consequence of depression, if you consider suicide a violent death, and it's a self-murder, it represents half of all violent deaths in the world, more than war and homicide. So, it's kind of gloomy, but let me talk a little bit more about stress and some of the things you can watch out in your own lives. And I think you probably all teach me stories and tell me stories about this yourself. I'm not too complicated. I'm not the one that does the research that you just saw. We have with us some of the great researchers from our department who we've been able to bring along here. And I hope you're thinking now while I'm talking, and I hope, did we distribute pieces of paper for questions to be written down? If you have them, no, because it's an easy way, or if you have a piece of paper, think about some questions that you might want to ask. And we don't expect people to necessarily put their hands up if they have specific questions, but think about that, because we're going to have a panel here. And any question you ever had, or ever wanted to know, if you want to write it down, we'll do our best to answer. You won't have a better chance than with these guys here in a few minutes when I get done talking. But I'm going to talk about some of the kinds of things that break down in my simple view of it. I look at life and those which protect us from stress having three major elements: work, love, and play. Work, what we do in our activities every day, in our contributions. Love, which we've been talking about, our relationships, our attachments, who we trust, who we talk to, who is close to us, our family, our friends, work, love, and play. What we love doing: water skiing, shopping, building models, fishing, traveling, writing, those things which we do, and when time passes, we get into the flow. All of us, when we aren't depressed, and when we're fed and not cold, hours pass while we're doing something that we love to do, reading, when we can concentrate on it. Concentration is one of the things that goes with depression. We can do okay when one of those things stops happening. Okay. We're broken a little bit. Right? So, if we lose our job, but we have our family around us, and we can still go out hiking, get exercise, do something, it's okay. But you can't say that it doesn't have stress. You can do okay if you're working and you have your peers who you're with every day, and you still have your enjoyable activities, even with family loss. Why is it? And I haven't even asked this. I've just gotten on the marriage thing. I don't know about what happens with the death and with the funeral. Maybe you're going to teach me about that. I am sure that when that happens, you're not alone. So you can have losses. You lose two of those things, work and a loved one, you're teetering, like trying to balance on a chair with one leg. If you have a family history, the genes, and it doesn't have to be just that, because maybe your family hasn't had that much stress in them, or it's individuals. You can be more vulnerable. Maybe you're also a little backed up. Maybe your headache's a little backed up. And maybe if you have, or a loved one has a predisposition, something will kick in and happen in the emotional sphere. Notice I'm not quite using the stigma word, right? Mental sphere, psychiatric. In the emotional sphere. In the thinking sphere, you're not going to be thinking as clearly. You're not going to be feeling as clearly. People who are depressed can suddenly get angry. Road rage, which we've heard about. And I would understand you're all familiar with that, particularly in the younger group. Something starts breaking. I'm suppressed. You lash out in a way that you wouldn't usually do. Things change with that. So, that's what I use the word stress. Everybody is happy to talk about stress, so they're proud of it, but not when it gets too serious. I'm stressed out. It's okay to say. So, when stress happens, we all have to cope. If you have work, love, and play, and you know this, some people start working harder. Workaholics. Why are you working so? I'm just because something stressing them. Could be a stress at home. They go and work hard, and so they try and balance the portfolio a little bit. Things are terrible at home. They want to go work more. Things are stressful in both places. They go golfing. Something we all have to metabolize. We have to balance this out. So, there's lots of ways to cope, and we're going to hear more about that. When Greg comes up here, I ask him if he can say a few words about coping. And I'll tell you, there are some bad ways of coping. And one of the biggest bad ways, one of the most popular bad ways of coping is the misuse of substance, drug, alcohol, things which grab you. I say to people, my patients who come in who are addicted, I'm not shy at all of saying, oh, yeah, man, that alcohol, that works. You can feel good right away. But it's those side effects that are a problem. The side effect of addiction which, as we say, can hijack the willpower. After a while, the brain, that brain you just saw taking over. It's not you. It's not about will. It's not just about willing yourself. You're captured in this way. And so, if you're a coper using that, it'll work in the short term. There's other ways of coping, and I just told you, and the healthy ways, which I think are exercise, family, doing things, changing where you are, moving to someplace physically, recognize that you're stressed. Prayer. I'm sure you all pray, whether it's to one God or another, or if it's in the Al-Anon model, to a higher power of some sort. It's a play. If you're a meditator, a way of getting some kind of peace and inner control of your breathing, it works. And the scientific evidence of it working, we're embarking now at Mass General Hospital in a study looking at the effectiveness of meditation on depression. Not just making it up, not just for fun. There's plenty of data out there. Coping. If you have stress, you're going to cope. Watch how you do it. Do what works, but be careful about what you do that works, doesn't cause damage to yourself or others. When you do get to that spot, and this is where it gets, the stress gets pretty bad, and it's the antithesis, it's the opposite of attachment. It's that loneliness. The loneliness of depression, the stigma. For those of you who've had depression or have loved ones, something happens to time. The moment of the present and the pain of the present moment seems to be infinite. The capacity to remember a happier past seems to disappear. The capacity to imagine a happier future, hopefulness, seems to disappear. And you're stuck there with no way out. So, well, a line I use when I do therapy, talking to people, I have the luxury to be able to do that sometimes, is that I say, if God had meant us to have psychotherapists, He wouldn't have given us family and friends. So cherish your friends and your family. It can get you through a lot of hard weather. And at this point now, I have been instructed to call up the piano. No? Hello? Pardon? Oh, this is my favorite part. So I get to introduce Dalal and Dalal Alhoma Azzi. Okay, sorry, I'm working on the pronunciation. And by the way, her family thinks this is amusing as well. So I want to say something about you two. Are you coming up? You are. Come up to see. These are two young women who have come to Boston, and we have a lot of students who come to Boston to want to study with us. These two are extraordinary. They had an idea that wasn't, and this is important, it wasn't just about themselves. It was about, and why we're here in so many ways, it was about their country. They persuaded us to come here to meet their friends and family, and we have, because they have an idea about stigma, they have an idea about what they can do to change their country, and they're very persuasive. So And they too had support because it gets into this generational piece. I've met their family and their mother and father, and a special person who's like a family to the country in so many ways, who I've gotten to know, and I sort of refer to as the mother of this event in many ways. Cheika Aurora Al-Sabah.